All right, welcome. Hello, everyone. My name is Nicholas Hall. I'm the founder of Graham's Foundation. I am really excited today to talk to Juliet and Lauren from the Adult Preemie Advocacy Network. Did I get that right?
Yeah,
It's a
well
bit of a
done.
mouthful, yes.
Yes, that's why we'll just refer to it as APAN for the rest of our conversation today. Um, Before we get started, I just wanted Juliet and Lauren to each have an opportunity to introduce themselves and kind of share a little bit about your story, your prematurity story, your journey, and obviously we're gonna dive into APAN as an organization, the inspiration behind it, and of which both of you are that. So just wanted to give each of you a chance to share a little bit about your story.
Thank you, Nicholas. So I'm Juliet. I'm now 28 years old. So I was born in the late 90s alongside my twin sister Beatrice. We were born at 28 plus 4 weeks gestation due to complications from twin to twin transfusion syndrome, which left us both really fighting for our lives. I spent a long time in neonatal intensive care, lots of breathing support, lots of care required for infection, the pretty standard long-term care required when you're born that early in that decade. And my twin received even more intensive care, requiring things like brain surgery, etc. And we then both survived the NICU, very fortunately. I went on to grow up until my twin was 12 years old and sadly passed away. But from then, I've taken a lot of inspiration
Mm.
from just viewing the care that she needed and have then decided to become a nurse. So I trained as a children's nurse and practice in Cambridgeshire these days.
It's amazing. You're not the first person that has shared that their life's journey started in the neonatal intensive care unit, and then, through that journey and through really understanding um, the journey has been inspired to give back in the way that you do. I'm curious, your twin sister, and I'm sorry for your family's loss, was her just, was her journey and her passing, was it related to, as best you know, to her premature birth, that the complications that she had to continue to deal with?
Yeah, it's completely linked. There's no separation there. That
Yeah.
from the moment that the twin to twin transfusion syndrome was causing problems during my mum's pregnancy, through all of the course that that brings of the prematurity itself as such a hurdle for the body to survive, let
Yeah.
alone do anything more than that. And then the
Yeah.
neonatal course requiring neurosurgery, for hydrocephalus and how much damage that does leave behind, but how my parents persisted for her chance to survive, and how that led us to having 12 rocky but blessed years of her in our lives
Mm.
until her body just felt it was at its stage where one more infection was her final hurdle and she was able to pass
Yeah.
peacefully at home.
Mm. Thanks for sharing that, Juliet. Appreciate it. And Lauren, hello again.
Hi. So I'm 37 years old, born in 1988. Um, I was born at 26 weeks gestation and weighing 430 grams because my mum had preeclampsia. I'm an only child.
Mm.
Probably the most obvious outcome of my NICU stay is the vocal cord paralysis from being on the ventilator for such an extended period of time and being so small. Um, but apart from that, my NICU journey was actually, unfortunately, quite unremarkable. Had the standard things like infections, but really no need for additional intervention and things like surgery. So I feel really fortunate about that.
Yeah. Yes, as parents, when we're in the neonatal intensive care unit with our babies, if we're fortunate that we're able to bring our baby home, you've got a lot of time to learn about all the different possibilities, right? And you are hoping for a long stay, but you're also hoping to have an unremarkable um, journey. And it's interesting, to how much care has changed in just each of your lifetimes. Um, intubation is rarer, actually, and certainly um, it's usually not for as nearly as long of a time as was just more, it was just more the standard uh, way to provide. Well, what am I telling Juliet's a nurse? What am I telling her? She knows. Um, so one of the things that we had a chance to just to meet briefly earlier that we talked about is just, my twins were born 25 weekers in 2006. And just in that period of time, the survival rate for babies born preterm, at least here in the United States, and probably in a lot of at least first world countries, continues. So survival rates continue to increase. Um, they're they're intervening earlier and earlier, right? 21, 22 weeks, depending on how well developed the baby is. Um, but yet prematurity rates seem to be fairly consistent due to a whole host of reasons. So I'm pretty decent with numbers. You put those numbers together, that means there are going to be more humans becoming young people, becoming adults like yourself that have been through this journey of premature birth, which again is not a diagnosis. So it's just, it happens, and the baby is in the world weeks, months before it's expected to. And to think that that's not going to have any sort of impact, even under the most perfect conditions that we can provide outside the womb, which is not the womb, um, is kind of crazy from my perspective. So I can I can understand. I've always thought that kind of what you all I think are up to makes complete sense because we as parents are like, there's something, are something, but it's not, something there. There's things there, but it's not standard normal ADD or ADHD or different thing, especially with the um, brain, but then with other sorts of functions. So see, what y'all are up to is makes, as I understand it. But I want to hear from each of you. What what inspired you to start the organization? When did you start it? So let's just, yeah, tell me a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. So for me, it started in a room in a hospital in London, but it was during a research project. So I was training to be a nurse in Cambridgeshire. And I don't know quite how I stumbled upon it, but found a study that was looking into the outcomes that should be asked for in every neonatal research project. And I was like, this is really interesting. And also, I can be a part of this. I want to do something that brings me back into something I know was so important in my early years and ongoing, and so intrinsically linked to my twin sister and how valuable, how important she is to me. And I must have sent off an email or two and ended up being part of the online portion of the study and then all the way into this room in London where I sat next to a chap who was also born premature. And this is the first time I sat in a room with at the time, stranger, someone who had shared such a key part of their life with me, through their own reasons and their own journey. And I realised I wasn't on my own. There were other people who weren't as severely disabled as my twin outside of my family life. They wanted to interact and they were interested in research, and that's where it flowed from, is a passion and interest for research, people who were intrigued in these areas and also shared that common prematurity factor with me. And from there, went online. So we lived in different parts of the country. There was a Facebook group I joined, and it kind of catapulted from there into what we see now. It went from a love and interest in research and how can we contribute to the care of babies born now prematurely, into how do we contribute to their care going forward, how do we contribute to our own care, and now how do we advocate? And that's where Lauren comes in.
And just so yeah, what year, just to give me an idea of like the timeline you like
So I
ballpark.
graduated in 2018, so it must have been 2016 or
Okay.
2017, so nearly 10 years ago now.
Yeah, great. How about for you, Lauren?
So mine is quite a different story to Juliet's, I think. My mum has always been really honest and open with me about my prematurity. Probably, I don't really know why. I expect it was probably when I started school and people were commenting on
Mm.
my voice and is that different? So perhaps it opened the door for that conversation. Um, Definitely through school, we were noticing that I had some delays and struggles in areas and things like maths, but they weren't so significant that they would be categorized or diagnosed as something specific. So school was quite challenging in not necessarily having my needs recognized entirely. Um, and then if we fast forward to when I was 26 years old, I became quite unwell really rapidly. So I lost quite a lot of weight and became really fatigued. Um, and I went to the GP because it was starting to impact my job and ability to function. They agreed to run some sort of routine blood testing. And actually, something to flag is that my mum doesn't think I had a blood test between NICU and 26 years old because the thought was that I was relatively healthy and not a need. Um, and quite unexpectedly, the results showed that I had diabetes and kidney disease, which took us completely by surprise. And it was really only then that I started to look online at some of the scientific evidence and started to see that there was research that indicated that prematurity might have an impact on your organs later in life. So to cut that short, I got better. I'm quite stable now, which I'm really pleased about. And sort of really then focused on going back to work and just getting life back in order. Um, and then around the pandemic, I was actually made redundant from my job. But what that did was that it gave me a bit of space and time to start thinking about where do I want my life to go from here? What sort of career do I want? And I started looking into prematurity a little bit more and really just to try and find other people born preterm, just to share experiences, to see if my situation was a bit unique or there were things in common. And that's where I met Juliet, and APAN really just snowballed from
Yeah. Yeah, that's thank you for sharing that. And I think you bring up an interesting point. Um, because I've heard there's different approaches that parents have, frankly, raising their children just in general beyond the specific of being born prematurely. And that is, to what degree do you share or talk about um, the what a disability or something related or a particular challenge, like how much do you talk about that or do you not, so that the baby as it develops is kind of not aware of, so like being if you don't know any better, then it won't be an issue. But if you don't know any better, then perhaps you don't know to also, perhaps be looking for potential signs. I don't know that there's necessarily a right answer. I guess, Lauren, in your case, you had with the vocal cords, like, well, how did that I don't know how that to sort of like approach it like you don't know, like the parents, like, I don't know how, that would be kind of probably probably silly because it was clearly from your premature birth. But then thinking that, you know, not understanding that journey could have had that particular connection with your health issues later, um, it seems like uh, it seems like at least having that as a potential reason for what you were facing later. So perhaps, I guess it kind of gets into, I guess the question is, when did APAN, when did it get started? And what has been some of the early, I guess, surprises in starting the organization, if any?
So we officially started in January 2021. So that grew from sort of my memory of late 2020 of us adults born preterm, and because of the internet across the world, actually connecting and sharing our stories and just finding these, everyone's unique, everyone's individual, but there are these pockets of really common themes, like things
Mm.
like some struggles at school, perhaps with maths or perhaps socially, um, things like acknowledgement by healthcare providers, particularly primary care. And certainly that's something my mum has fed back to me, is that once I was discharged from NICU and passed the neurodevelopmental assessment, trying to engage with primary care, that preterm birth could potentially still be relevant in the future was like hitting a brick wall. And that the theory was that, well, just come to us when you have a definite problem.
Right.
And my mum was sort of saying, well, could we perhaps follow Lauren up just so we can catch any potential issues early? But she really hit a barrier with that. And that's something that really came out, I think, in those early days, Juliet, with chatting to people about their experiences.
And I found that lots of our peers and these people we are meeting and getting to know and becoming friends with were now able to share in a safe space things they'd never shared before. They didn't feel maybe comfortable talking with their family, their friends. No one else quite understood. And some key things linking to what Lauren said was that healthcare providers weren't even asking if we were born preterm. And if they did, were we equipped to give them the right information? That Lauren and I have always been given quite a lot of information by our families. My dad took a lot of photographs when we were born. We were given a 50-50 chance. So he went all out on getting things known and documented to treasure for however long
Yeah.
that we had. But
Yeah.
that gave me an insight. I have a photograph of me the day I was born, and I've used this in education materials for student nurses I now teach, showing all the bits of kit keeping me alive. And I've always known this from the photographs and the bits my parents remembered. And I then accessed my own medical records when I was training as a student nurse after having a placement on a different neonatal intensive care unit, and was piecing together how early, how small, and how sick I was, and how early and small, and how even sicker my twin was. And it was quite startling and emotional. And
Mm.
I then had this massive font of knowledge because I've been intrigued and asked why, that irritating question. But we realised that quite a lot of our peers had some knowledge, but didn't quite know how to get more, and then didn't know what to do with it because it wasn't asked for, it wasn't fed into it, it wasn't encouraged. And that's where we want people to be really bold and brave, because it's such a key piece of information that there is a huge reason why we're not all born at 28 weeks, 26 weeks, 25, 23, 22.
Yeah.
And we're now discovering this more and more. And as you say, Nicholas, the population is growing anyway, but this population of preterm infants, those who fit into the middle range, so those who aren't completely untouched by prematurity, and I don't think there's really a group there, people who are touched by it and it affects us in different ways and those subtle ways which really impact our life. And there's still that group of children growing up into adulthood who have very, very complex, very obvious severe needs from their prematurity with very clear diagnoses. And Laura and I sit in this other group, this bigger and growing population, because we're doing so well at keeping these babies alive and they get that chance at life. And now we have to respect that we're going to need a bit more going ahead.
Yeah, and it's the general like healthcare population that that is presented with you as an infant, as a baby, as a young person. It's our educational systems that are, that are presented with like what you shared, Lauren, the math, the processing, the social, uh, a lot of a lot of us parents felt like it's like our children feel like they're not as mature as their peers, but we're not really, and but yet we really want our kids to catch up. We want them, so there is there's that balance. We want our baby to pass all the tests. It's like you want to feel like everything is okay. Um, and so you want them to pass, but what is what does that mean really? And that's a that is a that is not a specific, here in the United States, it's state by state. It's you're working with an individual wherever you are locally, um, versus so it's different everywhere you are, everywhere you go. So so in terms of the what is APAN? I guess tell me a little bit more about sort of the organization, how it's structured, and sort of what you talked about kind of giving a platform for these for adult preemies to connect. And Juliet, you're obviously you have a love for research and all things related. So I'm curious, has this connectivity, has that led to the possibility, is there a database? Are you trying to identify different markers or different, is there anything, I mean, just being able to, I think, connect and have a safe place to connect is amazing. I'm curious what else beyond that, if anything, is the
So
organization up to?
thank you, Nicholas. So it grew from a few people interested in research and being allowed to join in these neonatal research as kind of token PPI, and it's grown into it morphed into that community, that sense of belonging, the people that know when we say, oh, I'm just this sensory thing, this texture just makes me go ugh, and you get 15 comments going, oh, I'm the same, can't touch cotton wool, hate styrofoam, and it feels like it wouldn't be a big thing in the big wide world, but as a nurse, actually, I can't pick up cotton wool for my patients. I have to put gloves on. So it does actually impact me day to day. So it grew into support and growth and kindness and intrigue and conversation about our physical well-being, mental well-being, and that's provided mostly through social media. It's 2025. There's a load of social media out there, and also we all come through a pandemic, and actually we're now global. We look at our website growth, and I think the first day we got an international viewer, I probably cried, and that was pretty awesome, knowing that someone has found us from abroad. That's not just my mum coming on the website, sort of thing, and knowing that we've reached people in different locations and how social media allows that to feed and to grow. And we have requests to join every single day. We have a closed group just for individuals like Lauren and I, and like your child, Nicholas, who were born premature, to provide that community, that safe space. We have a Facebook group also for anyone who has a vested interest in those born preterm, parents, young people, researchers, people born preterm can be here and share their experience there if they feel comfortable to do so as well. And that's all linked up on the website as well. I think we've got a little bit of Instagram and Twitter and is it Blue Sky presence as well, to try and capture people who don't enjoy Facebook or the website. But the website gives us statistics, and we can see where people are visiting from. We don't get any more than that,
Yeah.
and numbers, and we can see how day by day we're getting new country or a bigger view from the US this day, and that's where maybe Lauren's done a talk online, and you can see a real flourish of interest, and people will comment on the website if they don't use social media. We also get emails weekly, I'd say, if not more, from people who go, well, I'm not keen on social media, but can you chat? Or I've got
Yeah.
this thing that's niggling me, and is there any research on it? And we try and then collect together, sharing with them and sharing on the website, interesting research articles that are focusing on the lifelong impact of prematurity, and we've broken it down into different systems of the body and also different areas of life, like neurodevelopment, education, and kind of onward health as well, to create that start of a hub, really, where people can come and find that research, because that's where it grew from, and we've got to still remember that root, I suppose, of APAN. And we also have a page for sharing current research projects that are live and active and looking for participants, which always gets me really excited to have a new one shared with us. Or Lauren will be co-leading on one that I can shout really loud about, and we can share videos and links and actually allow people to engage with research, to feel like they're taking a step forward in their journey as well.
That's that's wonderful. It's you know, similar. I remember when I started Graham's Foundation, and the first donation came in that wasn't a friend or a family. Like, I didn't know who this person was, and I was like, wow, what we're doing touched and moved someone that I don't know personally. Will never forget that that moment. And I think what you all are touching on is similar. Why with Graham's Foundation, we've always focused on our support. We focus most of the efforts here in the United States, partly because we ship care packages, and so when you do that outside of the border, just gets complicated and very expensive. Um, but also, we kind of understand the healthcare system here as well, and the dynamics with how neonatal intensive care units are organized and when they transition home and early intervention, et cetera. And with our mentor program, our parents understand what, even if it's not state specific, there's a lot of similarities, right? And recognizing that the healthcare system in other countries is completely different. And so while I think the emotional impact of the journey is similar, there's some differences with the healthcare system. But and for what you all are doing, um, it's like when the premature baby becomes an adult, it's kind of or a young adult, it's kind of irrelevant what the healthcare system is. It's more relevant, the educational system, and then just getting on is as an adult and functioning in the world. And
You,
and like for you, Lauren, I mean, you were presented with an issue at age 26. So doesn't matter where you are healthcare wise, it's like it's figuring out what is going on and being able to, I can just imagine how powerful it could be to be able to communicate with other adults that have this shared background of being born prematurely that could help, everybody kind of goes online to help try and self-diagnose, or at least to get an idea so you feel a little bit more empowered when you are interacting with a healthcare professional. So I can imagine I can imagine how powerful that can be, and that with having that global platform that you do, you can get bigger numbers to be able to start to see some trends as well. How many, do you have an idea of, you would say how many, I don't know, members or, people that have sort of, would you say have participated or are somehow, um, would you say are a part of a part of APAN an adult preemie?
So for adults born preterm on our Facebook group, we've got over 350 adults now, which, considering I think we started with 4 or 5 of us, Juliet, it feels like a bit of an explosion. And we haven't even scratched the surface with
Yeah.
the number of people born preterm. I think from the website visits, I think we're nearly at 9,000 visits
yeah,
now.
as of this moment, we're 8,617 unique visitors to our website, and we will have gone live. That was the first iteration. The refreshed iteration would have been 21. Is that right, Lauren? Do you think?
Yes.
Yeah. And this includes over 23,000 views. It's a lifetime views from these visitors of all little corners of our website. Everything's been looked at, everything's been touched and digested, which is fantastic. And I'd like to add, Nicholas, you brought up a really interesting point that there are differences in healthcare and differences in healthcare needs and access, all these sorts of things. But it's not just to do with physical health, that there's the social, emotional well-being side of everyone's life, let alone us born preterm, and how that impacts us through our early years education, further education if we go into it, into our working life, our social relationships, our romantic relationships, our contact with our families, and the information we gather, and how much they tolerate us questioning and asking why, and all those sorts of things. And for me, my journey is intrinsically linked with my twin, and also her death, and how sometimes that can bring up a lot of emotions for me and my family. And other people's stories can be linked in with ill health for their family. And Lauren's mum was incredibly unwell when she was born, and how that links into the emotion of learning about that journey. And that can carry on through into our lives, and we need to ask another question, why? And no one has an answer, but that's an answer that with healthcare professionals, with school educators, with primary, secondary, tertiary care, we go, well, this is my health information I'm going to share with you, that I was born extremely prematurely, these are the circumstances. And the response is still often, oh, well, that was a long time ago. Oh, you look grown up now. Oh, that doesn't matter. And that got to the stage a number of years ago where I got so frustrated. I used my contacts from a little research project I was part of about premature birth and cardiology to reach out to a consultant and say, can you see me? Can I come and see you as a patient? Because you understand what might be going on with my heart. And I really voiced myself in there, and he was very, very willing to see me. But this was a very experienced, high level consultant cardiologist who had a specialist interest in the development of hearts through neonatal, premature journey, and therefore into teenage years and adulthood. And I travelled over to Oxford to see him and sat down with him, and for the first time was told, yes, your prematurity is definitely important. Your fact you were born in these circumstances at this premature level is important. Let me explain it to you, that the way that my heart, cardiovascular, nervous system will have developed under such stress and strain does impact its functionality. There's no set diagnosis for me. There's no set disease of my heart or my blood vessels. But he acknowledged that there's a difference and there's a difficulty there. It is what it is. It's not going to get better, not expected to get better or worse. This is you and your unique cardiovascular system. But I acknowledge why it's like that. And that was groundbreaking, because I realized that when there's a specialist interest, when a healthcare professional is equipped with the knowledge, they are willing to share it. But if they're not equipped with that knowledge, or families aren't equipped with that knowledge, how are they going to share that? And that's our biggest kind of thing we're gripping onto right now, is how do we develop that knowledge, share that knowledge, encourage that knowledge to be around for families, for healthcare professionals, educators, workplaces, because we might need some consideration, some adaptation. I did an interview recently for a role, and I knew that I was allowed for asked adaptations, and I had the confidence to think of a few things that might assist me in the way I process, the way I manage my emotions, that would go some way to supporting me in that interview. So I knew I could do the best I could. But that's taken me years and years to get to the stage where I can be confident to do that under my own steam. It wasn't offered to me. There's no instructions on how to do this, or what might help me as someone who is born preterm and sees the world a little bit differently. I had to really, really work at that. And I'm glad I did, and would encourage others to do the same.
I think you're bringing up so many important points, I mean, I know when you apply for a job, there's all these boxes they want you to check, and whether or not you have a disability, and it's like, oh, is that going to impact the chance of getting the job, and what is that, and
Yeah.
what exactly does that mean, and
Yeah.
to your point, being able to have the courage and confidence to be able to advocate for yourself and be able to be and also be able to be open enough to be able to share. Um, I think it can strengthen the relationship between you and your healthcare professional or your employer, et cetera. But if you try and, on the flip side, if you try and hide it and manage it without letting other people know, that just adds to the stressors, right? It's just,
Absolutely.
yeah,
And you bring up the word strength, and that's something we have to not forget, that yes, we need space and time and consideration for the things that are challenging, that are difficult, that are exhausting, that are painful. All these things need to be in the open when people feel ready, and give them space to do that, and education around that. But we've got to remember there's things we're pretty awesome at. We survived. Whoa, that's pretty amazing. And we survived and faced challenges, but we also find we're all quite determined. I think that's a term that came up. We did a survey where we wanted to present for World Prematurity Day a couple of years ago. What's important to us? What's our journey? What's our story? And we had a few really good tiles, kind of panels of a few of us, me and Lauren and a few others in the group, who'd shared what's important to them, a little bit about their story when they were born and what they do now. And a lot of us are in kind of healthcare or caring professions where we're doing a lot for other people. It doesn't surprise me, if I'm honest.
yeah.
And we are passionate about the things we do, we're intrigued about things, and we're stubborn, and that can be life-saving. It can be life-saving in the NICU, it can be life-saving in those teenage years where you're all spotty and everyone's bullying you and it's all a bit naff. Whereas actually you need to be really stubborn, you need to be really bold, and you'll then find yourself standing up for someone else who's had a difficult time, and being passionate and bold. And these are really important things to remember, that we can do these things too.
I'm sorry. I'm having just a fun time with your British phrases. It's like I need,
Oh, naff, bad
yeah.
things, good things, annoying things.
No,
Yes,
it's
dictionary words at the bottom here.
I know. It's like translate. No, I think I totally get it, but it's I'm loving it. Wow, I would like to make sure that that during Prematurity Awareness Month that we at Graham's Foundation definitely make sure we share what you all are, what you're up to, and I actually have an event that I think there'll be an opportunity for me to actually give a separate and special shout out to what you guys are doing because it really, I think there is so much focus and it makes sense, but there's a lot of focus on the baby, the neonatal intensive care unit. And I've always said, that's four walls, and that's where the journey begins for this fetus. It's not yet really a newborn. But really what is important is that these babies are going to become adults one day, and we owe it to them to do everything we can to support them, not only here at the beginning, but also throughout for the remainder of their journey. Can you share with me just a little bit about, you started to get into it, but what you're up, what are you up to these days? What's new? Any, new initiatives, anything that you guys are particularly excited about on the horizon at APAN?
So I'm off to Serbia at the end of this month to speak at the GENS conference just to talk about APAN and lived experience. So I think that's something that surprised me, was just how much this snowballed and how, I suppose, welcoming the academic community has been to placing the lived experience voice with equal weight alongside parents, so we can work together to improve sort of future outcomes and raise awareness for the older generations as well.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. I could not agree more. Um, Do you have any advice for parents that their babies are early in their journey or their early developmental years. Um, and from your own experience and now kind of seeing it all from the perspective of an adult, yeah, any suggestions, advice, or guiding principles, or things that really anything that really helped you, maybe some things that were intended to be helpful, but maybe weren't as helpful. And I recognize you would be sharing from your unique lived experience. So, so people can take this advice or suggestions or points of view for what they're, from directly from your own experience.
Do you want me to go first, Juliet?
Go for it. You've got the real key points and the Velcro.
I do. I'll share that little anecdote first. So the first time me and Juliet met physically in person, we were walking across the car park towards each other, and Juliet pointed at my shoes, which were slip-on trainers, and she said, "Oh, you wear slip-on shoes too," which then led to a big conversation about things like fine motor skills and shoelaces. So I think Juliet would agree fine motor skills are really, really important. But advice to parents would be to sometimes take the easy option when you're trying to fly out the door to school or to nursery and you're really busy, and use the calmer moments without the pressure to try and practice those skills. I think that would save everybody's peace of mind and be quite significant. Um, Also things like, as a parent, go with your gut. You know your child best.
Mm,
So, for example, perhaps at nursery or at school, if you're starting to see maybe behavioural changes, perhaps they're becoming more withdrawn, is go with your gut and raise it. And it might be you do, unfortunately, have to fight and advocate quite hard to be listened to. But
yeah,
please do it, because trying to carry that baton as an adult, I think, as Juliet has expressed really well, can be really challenging.
Absolutely. And if the child who is fortunate to grow and develop into an adult can see that the adults around them in their youth were able to advocate for them and be their cheerleader, they will be better equipped to do that themselves, which will be needed for all sorts of reasons, not just the fact they're born premature. And
yeah,
hopefully in a number of years, there will be much more of an open conversation around prematurity in households, but also in school, work and healthcare. And acknowledging that prematurity will carry with this young person throughout their lifespan. And it's a really key part of their story. I appreciate that some families don't go to the ins and outs of a birth story and the blood and the gore, but
yeah,
this is a key piece of health information. If you're asked to list your health concerns, this needs to be in there somewhere. It's not
yeah,
a diagnosis, but it's a huge fact that needs to be known and needs to be understood. I'm not expecting parents to be world renowned, world leading researchers in the lifelong impacts of prematurity. The aim is for Lauren and I to really spearhead that with all our wonderful friends here and across the globe who are doing this work already. But acknowledging there's a fact around their prematurity, that knowing some numbers about kind of how many weeks gestation, was there some ill health as well, and knowing that there will have impacts. And if you're interested, gathering some information or not looking for issues with your child, as you were saying earlier, you want your child to hit their milestones, you want them to develop and not have a pile of diagnoses, but recognizing they'll do things a little different potentially, and they might need a little bit more time, a little bit more patience, a little bit more help, or to do something in a different way, to study in a different way, to learn in a different way, to play in a different way, so that they're reaching their own potential. They might not tick a box for, top of the class developments or bottom of the class, here's a diagnosis, probably floating somewhere in the middle, and just need help to be our best within that area. And as
yeah,
Lauren was saying about common themes like fine motor skills, sensory perception and sensory tolerance is a very common, and touch, sound, sight, taste, these sorts of things can be really overwhelming sometimes, really comforting. All these themes do pop up. Difficulties in mathematics, I will say that again, that I have a first class honours degree in paediatric nursing, which includes a lot of medication calculations. Yet I really struggle with math. I have to use my fingers, but I have a first class honours degree. So when I find my areas and the things I'm passionate and the things that fit right in my brain, I can do exceptionally well. And some things just don't fit into that category. And that's
Yeah.
okay.
Wow. I can't thank you enough for taking the time to talk to me. I can't tell you how inspired I was when I learned about what you all are up to, because it's something like as I shared when we first met, and I've shared here today that um, it's something that I felt was um, I wouldn't say necessarily like needed per se, but just a real an opportunity because this is a growing population and it's a unique population, but yet, as we said, it's not a diagnosis, it's an occurrence, but yet that occurrence does bring some unique, um, special uh, differences that as you are able to connect with others, I think that feeling of belonging, feeling of understanding, awareness, I think that's emotionally important, psychologically important, but it's also just practically important. Being able to, you know, then have that understanding and feeling empowered, hopefully, building confidence, building insights. It's part of what we're trying to do to help support the parents so that they advocate for their baby so that, as you pointed out, Lauren, to trust your gut, trust your instinct. There were a couple of times when we did that during our journey in the NICU and it made a difference. And so to be able to continue to do that as parents, then obviously as young people growing up as well. So I'm really looking forward to, sharing our conversation here today and also just in all the other ways that we're able to help get the word out about all that you're doing. Have fun in Serbia, Lauren.
Thank
That's
you.
not, yeah, that'll be, I'm familiar with that conference, so that sounds like a wonderful opportunity. So we'll have to figure out ways to get you here over here in the States maybe sometime and be able to continue to spread the good word. So
That would be
thank
great.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks again.
Thank you.